Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and today I wanted to give you an overview on the Sinister Six, give you my thoughts on both the pros and the cons of all of these 6 new villains, and tell you guys how I kind of loosely rank them from worst or 6th place up to 1st place. Now keep in mind, these are my opinions after only about 2.5 days of playing with them. I have done quite a bit of world boss testing and some Shadowlands testing, but of course these opinions are subject to change should new information or buffs or some new kind of rotation come to light for us in the community. So don't take it as gospel, but let's check it out. So first up, I want to talk about Lizard. Lizard is a pretty interesting skill set. He's not a lot of a CC guy. He doesn't have a lot of kind of immunities or iframes. He does have 2 iframes, but they're quite short and they're on a long cooldown, so you can't chain iframes. He does have a heal, which is nice, 1 poison damage skill, which you can use in conjunction with an obelisk to boost his damage just a little bit, but it's really not a lot. And then he does have multiple skills, 2 in fact, that buff his attack, his defense, his speed, his crit, and also it reduces the amount of damage that he takes. And then his tier 2 passive kind of buffs those effects, kind of like Captain Marvel's tier 2 minus the boost or the immunity, sorry. The way that I see Lizard, he's kind of like Amadeus Cho. That would be the closest comparison that I have to him. He doesn't do a lot in terms of flashy crowd control, flashy moves, but he just does solid damage, and if you build him properly and you use his damage reduction skill effectively and consistently, he does take a lot of damage. In conjunction with his reptilian regeneration, it makes him hard to kill, especially at tier 2. However, if he takes enough hits, he'll still die. So he does have that problem. He doesn't have a lot of ways of protecting himself. I don't think he gains as much from his tier 2 passive as some other characters. He certainly doesn't have as strong of a tier 2 passive as someone like Cho, who gets dodge, ignore, guaranteed dodge, and bonus damage. He only gets a bump to both his healing and his self buffs, which are good but not great. I would kind of put Lizard as kind of an average villain in the combat class. Like I said, similar to Cho, probably good for PvP. If you build him properly, especially at tier 2, he can definitely take down most world bosses. He's probably going to struggle a lot against Black Dwarf if he can do it at all, but he should be able to clear Thanos, possibly Infinity Thanos with the right setup and the right amount of love, but I don't think he's a top pick from this tier of characters. Secondly, I want to talk about Mysterio, because there's a lot of mystery surrounding this character. He's got a lot of very cool animations. I have to say, some of the most unique effects come from this character, and that's a big pro for me. I love to watch Mysterio use all of his different skills, his Spirit Bomb, and all of his different effects. He turns into Professor X. It's fantastic. However, the big con with Mysterio right now is that his damage is super low. Definitely the lowest damage output of the Sinister Six, among the lowest damage dealers in the game. He deals very, very low damage on his own. Lower, I think, in fact, than Moon Girl, if you want to use that as a comparison, which is a bit of a disappointment. I know that some people have said that it fits thematically, that his skills deal low damage because he's just an illusion master and it's not real. But even with a damage proc, from what I've seen other people post about, it's not anything to be impressed by. Yes, his skills all deal mind damage, so that can be augmented greatly by a mind damage obelisk. But if you have to invest so much into a character just to get their damage to be below average or average, there is something not wrong there, but there is something that you need to take note of. So I think Mysterio is probably not a safe bet for newer players who are looking to invest in one of the Sinister Six, because he needs a lot of love to be able to do anything. Now, I do think that Mysterio will be very powerful in Alliance Conquest or other PvP modes where it's, auto play and you can take advantage of an obelisk with invincibility, and you can put him on a team where he can be protected by someone like Odin or another person with a shield, maybe Volstag's tier 2 passive. But on his own, one-on-one, he struggles. It took me a long time to even kill a world boss. I struggled mightily in Shadowlands, and I just think that some of his skills need to be tweaked. The damage numbers are very low, 15%, 35%, 50%, 33%, very, very low. And then on top of that, his stats are very low. Even as a blast character, he has one of the lower end, at least at tier 1, energy attack stats. He might have kind of the Magneto syndrome where he gets a lot better at tier 2, but everything I've seen from the community so far has said that he doesn't get that much better. It looks cool, the crowd control is great, and that's all. There's just not enough damage there one-on-one. He needs help. So for those reasons, I would probably compare Mysterio to Maximus. He's got a lot of crowd control, he's got a lot of ways of distracting you with summons, but his individual damage when you're fighting one-on-one is quite low. And he does have the added, non-benefit, or the added kind of negative effect in Mysterio's case, that he only has one type of summon. Maximus can kind of flood the field with lots of different summons, so that can really distract and create a lot of meat shields for Maximus to not get hit. In addition, Maximus also has a guard, which Mysterio doesn't and probably needs because he's also quite fragile. So I'm a little bit disappointed with Mysterio, right now, but we'll see if something will change for him in the future. Next up, we have Rhino, a bit of an interesting case for a combat character. Not the greatest defenses, at least at tier 1 from what I've seen, and he's very slow. Those are the two big negatives I have for him. His base movement speed is abysmal, so you have to be very careful when you're trying to kite enemies because you can underestimate how slow he is and then get punished for it. However, he does have a guard. It only lasts for 3 seconds maxed out, but it is a guard. And he also has an iframe on his 5th skill. Besides that, his skills really don't do much. It's not very safe to use 4 or 1 because they have long animation times and they leave Rhino vulnerable to damage. 3 is okay because it buffs his physical attack, so you can cast that and cancel it. But otherwise, you're stuck with just 5 and 2. And Rhino does deal good damage even if you're just rotating through those 2 skills. So damage is really not Rhino's issue, but the survivability, especially at tier 1, is what I call into question. Now, his tier 2 passive is very interesting, and I do reserve my final judgment on Rhino until I see what this tier 2 passive can really do. I haven't seen any tier 2 Rhinos running around inside the zoo just yet. But judging from his tier 1 right now, he definitely does need a lot of defensive help. Perhaps someone like Volstagg, perhaps an all-defense max HP Obelisk in order to make the most out of his kit, because he's not an offensive powerhouse and he's not a defensive tank. He's kind of sitting somewhere in the middle. The best comparison I have to Rhino would be someone like Giant Man. He buffs himself and he has a skill that gives him limited immunity. In Giant Man's case, I believe it's 2 or 3 seconds of immunity. In Rhino's case, he's got the iframe plus the 3 second for 5 hits. So I'd say he's a little bit tankier than Giant Man, but they both do very good damage for a tier 1 character, but it's more about keeping them alive long enough to do enough damage to actually win. He can definitely clear world bosses at tier 1, but it is a struggle, and you will have to time his iframe and his guard hit very well to not get punished by the enemy. I think he's a little bit below average tier, and not, again, one of the top 2 or 3 Sinister Six that I would invest in if I were you. The next 3 I'm going to talk about are the 3 that I favor the most. These 3 I think have the most complete kits. I think these are more user friendly, and these ones will give you more to work with, especially if you're still getting used to the game mechanics as far as, canceling skills, using iframes, using immunity, getting out of the way, buffing yourself, and generally having success in World Boss and in Extreme Alliance Battle and in Shadowland. So let's talk about Kraven. Kraven, I originally said, by looking at his stat sheet from the update patch notes, wasn't going to be good. No text on any of his skills is usually a recipe for disaster. He just has a stun on his 5th skill. But I was wrong. With 3 iframes and a very fluid skill set, Kraven is actually a lot of fun to play. Survivability can still be an issue for him because while he does have decent stats, he is actually quite beefy for a speed character. You can see there he's got lots of physical defense and energy defense. He is getting Sandman's leadership right now as part of this team up, but still he can take a couple of hits. but because he doesn't have any immunity or any invincibility or any healing, if you take too many hits, regardless of what you do, you're going to die. However, he does have 3 iframes on 3, 4, and 5, which you can cycle through pretty consistently to cancel the enemy's attacks and also to protect Kraven from danger. In addition, he looks so cool doing those iframes. They're just so much fun to watch, and they're very, very effective skills. He deals good damage as a speed character. Thank you for slamming the door. And he generally is a lot of fun to play. He just doesn't have a lot of crowd control or other kind of effects that kind of bring him into the meta. But he's definitely a capable character, and if you invest in him, even at tier 1, I think he'll surprise you in a good way. The best comparison I have for someone like Kraven would be Elektra. Elektra doesn't have anything fancy with her skills. She just has iframes in a lot of her skills. And that's kind of what Kraven has, where he can just chain iframes and protect himself that way if your timing is good enough. I would say he probably has a little bit more AoE and a little bit more defense and HP. He's a little bit tankier than Elektra. So if you like the way Elektra plays, you will not be disappointed with a character like Kraven the Hunter. Second to last, I want to talk about Sandman. Sandman is probably our best bet for the free-to-play Carnage alternative. I myself have not been able to reproduce the scores that I've seen from a couple of community members, but we have seen scores above 100,000 solo, which is consistently the top score next to Carnage. Everyone else, Nebula, Ulick, the other ones that I've mentioned in the past, struggle to get above 100,000 and usually have to do so in conjunction with one another. It has to be a tier 2 Ulick plus a tier 2 Nebula, switching back and forth because of damage, because of silence, and because of iframes. However, it is possible, however hard, for Sandman to do it on his own. So that is a big super plus. The negatives to Sandman are that he's a little bit deceptive as far as his iframes go. A lot of them are partial iframes. He will get hit in between. And his heal from sand conversion is not as good as it seems because the pieces of heal that you pick up are actually extremely small in radius. So sometimes you'll run over them and miss them, and you really can't bother to double back because you'll usually get hit. So he seems to have more defensive tools than he really has. His iframes are not as reliable as you might like, and the healing is again not as reliable as you might like. But he does have a lot going for him. He has immunity, he has iframes with persistent damage, and he's got a buff to his defense with super armor. In addition, you can cancel his 5th skill and watch the damage continue to pile on as you move into his 4th, 2nd, 3rd, or 1st skills. And he does have that physical immunity, which can, combo with his regular immunity to help him. I think his tier 2 passive is great, and I think it's going to benefit the character a lot, especially for Extreme Alliance Battle. So if you're finding that you can get about 80 to 90,000 with him right now, definitely invest in that tier 2 if you want to see those dividends pay off, because I think they really will. You are going to get hit by the Frost Beast or in other game modes with Sandman, but if you have that tier 2 passive, you're going to take a lot less damage, and it's going to be a lot more manageable for you, especially if you can pick up some of those kind of hard to reach health globes. But I do think Sandman is a great character to invest in if you want a combat supervillain, and he's one of the best from this list of the Sinister Six. A comparison that I would give to a character that we have right now would be Medusa, with some additional kind of benefits, more damage, or just a better overall kit. The reason why I pick Medusa is because they both have a way of making themselves immune, but they can't chain immune with iframes. They have to use other skills, so their rotation is quite challenging for newcomers to use, but the rewards for mastering the skill rotation for these characters is great, and they do deal very good damage in their own right. Finally, I want to talk about Vulture. I saved him for last because I think Vulture is the best or the most consistent character at tier 1 or tier 2 from this Sinister Six update. However, he's also the most difficult to get, so if you are dropping a mega rank up ticket on one of these characters, if you've already bought his uniform, I think Vulture is a great investment. And I think he's a great investment for a couple of reasons. Now, despite the fact that he doesn't have a lot of CC, and despite the fact that he doesn't have any kind of healing or any kind of immunity, he has tons of iframes, and he fits a very specific niche in that he's a villain and he's a speed type. We have very few speed villains, so this is a welcome join to the club. I know Kraven is also a speed villain, but Kraven doesn't have the same amount of damage or the same amount of iframes as Vulture. So that's why I had to put Vulture ahead of Kraven. And wow, Vulture is extremely powerful. With iframes on 5, 4, and 1, you can essentially just chain iframes the whole match and barely ever get hit. Vulture is like a more powerful version of Robbie Reyes. So if you like the way that character plays with constant iframes and constant zipping around, you're gonna like Vulture. It's exactly the same. He does incredibly good damage even for a tier 1 character. I was able to clear World Boss in under 1 minute and 30 seconds with his own leadership, which is very, average, run-of-the-mill leadership, at tier 1 with basic gears and no obelisk and a decent ISO set, but that's about it. So I think Vulture is a fantastic character from this update. He's probably the best one of them all, especially given the fact that he has a uniform to further augment his power, and he does have a very good tier 2 passive with multiple benefits to it. 30% guaranteed dodge is nothing to laugh about. In addition, the guaranteed crit. He should be very good for World Boss, very good for Shadowlands. I soloed stage 22, that villain MODOK stage, again with a tier 1 Vulture solo, and should be also quite good in Conquest. He just doesn't apply for Extreme Alliance battle because he's not a hero. So that is my breakdown of all 6 Sinister characters. I hope you appreciated what I was giving you guys as far as the pros and the cons. I really tried to look at it both from a newcomer's perspective and from a veteran player's perspective in terms of what you can use the character for in different game modes, but I kind of see their value based on those different aspects. Let me know what you guys think of my overall breakdown in terms of which characters I think are the best and which characters I think need a lot of love to be good, and let me know what you think of my character comparisons, because I am quite curious if you like my comparisons or if you think they're not so accurate. And of course, guys, if you like what you see, I hope to see you again tomorrow. Take care.